You're gonna have to bear with me. I've never done this before, and I feel a bit professional right now. I don't really like it, but yeah. All right. I've got a Slido going. Maybe you use it, maybe you don't. I don't know. One of my classes, 204, does these, and every now and again it gets a question. I'll get the TAs to sort of yell them out at me. So, I mean, if you want to ask a question and you don't want to, like, yell at me, I mean, try it out. You can also just yell at me. I'll answer. I don't mind. Yeah. So welcome to QWEB. You may have been to the kickoff event, but if not, we'll give you like a brief little intro. Essentially, here's what we're doing today. I'll just give you a little bit about QWEB. I'll say like 5 minutes on the internet because I feel like I should. We'll install VSCode because we are trying to be as beginner friendly as possible. We'll do a little bit of HTML, and then we'll have a social at the end. And that's sort of the plan for today. If you have any questions, we have TAs floating around. Put your hand up, they'll answer, or I mean, I'll answer your questions. So here's the team. I mean, I'm Josh. I don't know. I'm not going to introduce the rest. We introduced ourselves at the kickoff. You can ask them who they are. It's all good. So here is sort of just a little bit about QWEB, but our main goal is to teach you stuff in the fall so that in the winter you're able to build your own website. And you'll work on a little team to do that. And essentially, we want you to have something that you're proud of, something maybe that you can put on your resume, and sort of our goal is after this year, you'll feel a lot more comfortable with web development because at least I feel it's something that isn't really taught at Queen's. We do a lot of theory, and we don't really talk a lot about stuff that you actually do in industry. And so we've got some people on the team who have taken internships and other stuff actually in the industry, and so hopefully we're wanting to sort of fill that gap. So here's specifically what fall and winter term look like. I essentially just explained a little bit about them before, but yeah, in the winter term, you'll fill out a little form, and then you'll be put on a team. You'll have a team lead who will sort of help lead you in a semi-management position, and then you'll help each other build a website. And our entire education team will be there to support you. I mean, I'll be able to answer any questions that you have, etc. So here is what the next 2-ish weeks look like. Today we're going to do a little bit of HTML, not tomorrow, next week, which will be actually the week after because reading week. I'm not going to think that anyone would show up to that. We'll do some CSS. Then after that we'll do Flexbox and JavaScript. I think we did a poll and a decent number of you have some amount of web development experience, mostly in HTML, CSS. Our thought was we'll start at the beginning, and that allows anyone to come in, right? So that's why we're not jumping right into React and JavaScript. We want to build the foundation for everybody. In week 3, mostly week 4, is when we'll start actually doing React. So if you're really experienced and you've done web development before, maybe you want to keep coming just to get a refresher. But at the end of the day, week 4 is when we'll start doing React. And then sort of week 8 and 9 is sort of when we'll start to do a lot of back-end stuff. I think almost nobody had a bunch of prior React experience, so I guess what I'm trying to say is week 4 is the week to look out for. That's when we start React. That's when the cool stuff starts happening, and we just got to build a little bit of a foundation first. So here is a sort of a very brief, abstracted of like how the internet works. Essentially, we just have a bunch of servers scattered all over the place. And we are going to use our computers to connect to them. They'll send us some data back, and then our web browser is going to say, hey, this is what that should look like. And that's the web in like 30 seconds. And that's probably about how much I'll cover of it. I mean, I've got some fancy slides here about what a request looks like sort of thing. And if that sounds confusing, that's all right. We'll cover that once we get to the back end sort of thing. But essentially what happens is your web browser says, hey, I want this information. The server gives it back to you, and then you're all good. And it'll display it right on your web browser. Modern websites have a bunch of buzzwords, and it's actually a bit confusing. They've got like databases, REST APIs, frameworks, and all that stuff. I actually, when I was starting tech, I found all of the buzzwords very confusing. And not going to lie, I still don't know what all of them mean all the time. But suffice to say, we will cover what all of this stuff means. And the only thing that we want to sort of say about this is that a lot of web development these days is split into the front end and the back end. The way that I think about it is the front end is just what you're looking at, and the back end is sort of how you fill out the information on that site. And suffice to say, that's all that we're really going to say about it for this week. We'll get into it more in week 9, but that's sort of a brief introduction. Here is sort of an example of a response. We'll get into this more later. Next is sort of VS Code. Honestly, a lot of you guys are in CS. This is probably going to sound redundant, but that's okay. The industry-leading sort of IDE for web development is VS Code. We use it because it's got extensions, it's great for web development, and it's really customizable. You can really make it your own. And so you can head over to the VS Code website. You can download it directly on this site. Just hit install. I mean, I could show you right now. I've got it downloaded here. If you just open it up, I mean, it's just like any other installer. Honestly, I'm probably boring you with this. I just wanted to show it just in case. I figured I want to make this as beginner-friendly as possible, and that's kind of our goal with today. So once you've installed VS Code, you'll be able to open it up. I don't know if anyone has any issues with that, let me know. I've installed it on Linux before if you need help with that. Same with some of the TAs, but suffice to say, you should be all right, and if not, you can talk to us after. Oh, there's my, this is my homework, that's great. Oh yeah, 204. Love that class. Oh, love it so much. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Perfect. So here is VS Code. On the left side, you've got this little file thing that will open up your files. Your startup page will look a little bit different, but generally what you want to do is hit File and open a folder somewhere, and then that's the folder that we're going to work in today. If anyone has any issues, like put your hand up, a TA will help you, but I think I'm just going to charge right on. All right. So now we've given you sort of a brief introduction to, QWEB. We've installed VS Code. Let's actually, do some work today. The first thing we're going to do is we'll open up our VS Code and we'll make a new file, and I'm just going to call it club1.html. And the naming really doesn't matter. I'm splitting these out into a bunch of different files to make it easier to show you the differences, but you don't have to worry about it that much. Essentially, all websites are built on HTML. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. All of that is really not that important. So we're going to make our first HTML file right now. So whenever you create an HTML file, it has the .html file extension. This is HTML's version of the .py that you probably would have used for Python if you're taking 101 or 121. At the very top of our file, we'll have to say, hey, this is an HTML file, so we're going to use open a arrow bracket, type an exclamation mark, and then say doctype HTML. And this just says, hey, this is for sure an HTML file, just in case. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up another arrow bracket, type HTML, and we're going to tell the website that, hey, this is an English website. So we're then going to type LANG, and that's going to stand for language. Then you can do a variety of different languages here, but we're going to do English. So we're going to use equal, and then we're going to open up I forgot what they're called. There we go, double quotes. We're going to open the double quotes and type EN for English. You'll notice that as soon as we close our HTML tag by using a closing bracket, VS Code will automatically make us a new one. And if we hit enter, we'll sort of be inside this tag, for lack of a better word. The HTML tag is sort of the outermost tag, and what's going to store everything that's on your website, all of the content. From here, we are going to define two different parts of the website. So the first one is going to be called head, H-E-A-D, and we're going to open that up, and then we're just going to leave some space in there. And then the next one is going to be body. And I realized that I've just made you type out a bunch of weird stuff, and it doesn't really make that much sense. But suffice to say, stick with me for a minute. We're going to save this file, and then we're going to open up our file browser, and we're going to find where we saved it. There we go. So once you've found where you saved it, if you have a web browser installed, which, I hope you do, you are going to see that it'll probably have a symbol of that web browser, and you can just open that shit up, and it will show you your first website. It's going to be kind of disappointing. Not that great, but we technically have a website. You'll notice that the sort of URL here is pointing directly to the file location, and it's completely blank. If we head back to our VS Code, you'll realize that this head location here, it actually corresponds to mostly the tab title. That's how I'm going to explain it for now, is it kind of deals with the stuff like outside of the website. Then if we head back over here, we've got the body tag, and that's going to deal with the content that's actually on the page. This seems a bit confusing, but if I open up another file here that I've pre-written called club2, and the reason that I'm telling you these names is that we'll post the GitHub repository at the end, so you can look at all these files if you want to. So in the differences here is we have our head here still, we have our HTML tag here still, just like we had before, but inside of our header tag, we've defined this meta tag. And this is one of the last things that I'm going to sort of abstract away until later and tell you that this makes sure that the text on your website renders correctly. And that's pretty much all that I'm going to say about it until we get much later. If you want to talk to me about what it does, you can come up at the end and we can have a discussion about it, but it's not really that important, so we're not really going to cover it. Then below that, we have the title here, and this is what changes the tab title. And so to actually show you all of these changes, I can go back into my file explorer, I can find that actual file, and if I open it up here, I'll see this version of the website. But I want you specifically to look at the tab title up at the top here, and we can see that it's called People Watching Club. And so that's because inside of these arrow brackets, we put People Watching Club. So the header, inside of the header, we're defining a title, and that's where we change the tab title. From here, we're going to find our body tag, and that's where most of the content for the website is going to be stored. So we have our opening body tag here, we have our closing body tag here, so everything within that is technically within the body tag. Then up here, we have an H1 tag. H1 stands for heading 1, and there's 1 through 6 of them, and that just changes the size. It really doesn't matter. It's not a big deal, but essentially know that H followed by a number is generally a heading, and so that'll make your text a little bit bigger, it'll add some extra space and all that jazz. It'll just format it for you a little bit. Then below here, we have what's called an image. I mean, you know what an image is, but you know what I mean. So the first thing that we define is SRC, and that stands for source. And so what we're actually doing here in these quotation marks is we're giving a link to an image on the web somewhere, and then we're actually setting its width to 500. And so you can actually set this source to any file on your computer, and then it will display that image. Or you can find an image online like we have here. I mean, if you Google for something like people, and you head over to images, you can grab one of these images, copy the link, and then if we head back over to our code, and if we replace this link here, with the new one, and if we save our file, head back over to our website, hit the refresh button, we'll see that that's the image that shows up instead. We also have this width tag, which seems a little bit weird. The best way to explain it is if I remove it, and then I save the file and refresh, you'll see that the image becomes massive. That's because it's displaying at its original resolution. Suffice to say, we'll use the width or the height attribute in order to change the size of our image so that our website doesn't look hilarious. All right, from here, we're going to look at one more predefined file that I wrote before, and that one is called club3. Just give me one second. I'm just going to turn on word wrap. There we go. All right, so here's our image from before, and then the next thing that we're going to show you is just some simple text showing. First, we have our P tag, which stands for paragraph. Generally, if you have a block of text, you're going to want to put it into side of a paragraph tag so that the web browser will format it correctly. Here we then are going to use the strong tag to define some bolded text. Strong is generally used for if the text is important as well, but it will also just straight up bold it. So if I head back over to here, and if I open it up, if I actually show you the spot that I'm talking about, it's this set of text here. So this entire thing is within the paragraph tag. Then, if we look at human specifically, we'll realize that, hey, it's bolded text, and that's happening because it's inside of the strong tag. Then we also have, in brackets here, we have I, which stands for italics, and we've put Homo sapiens in there. And we also are using the B tag here, which stands for bold. And your first thought is probably, why do we have strong and bold? Suffice to say, that's a complicated answer depending on who you ask, but at the end of the day, they do the same thing on the front end. They both bold the text, and so we're not going to really worry about it too much more than that. That ends up our paragraph tag, and that's how we got this set of text to look like this. We used the bold tag, we used the italics tag, and we used the paragraph tag. From here, we've also defined some break lines. This is just how we can add some space to our website. If you've written some Python, this is probably the equivalent to the \n in a print statement. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. But essentially, we're just going to add some new lines, add some space to our website, because we want to sort of block stuff out. Then the next thing you'll realize here at the bottom of the site is we have our first link. And so this is how we can actually link to another website from ours. And so this one links to a random site with facts about the human body. But essentially, we can link to pretty much anything from our website. And we're going to use what's called the A tag in order to do that. And in the A tag, we're going to assign an attribute, which is just the same as when we were using an image before, and we use source. Instead, for the A tag, we're going to use href, which is going to give where we're going to store the actual hyperlink that we're going to link to. So in this case, you can see the exact link that I went to when I clicked that. And then within the A tag, we're going to show the text that we actually want to be clickable. So that is how we've gotten to this point. We have a title. We've got sort of another heading here. We've put down an image. We've put down some text. And we've even got a link here at the bottom. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right.
Anything on the Slido, maybe? No.
Okay. Do you want to write the Slido number on the board?
I definitely can. I don't know what it is. I don't know.
By the way, I saw some people looking at each other a bit weird when they saw the people watching description. For context, we're making the website as absurd as possible, and we voted at the kickoff what the idea should be, and people watching Club One.
What's up?
How do you make the text, the link, look like not a link? Like it says click here for people facts. What's the tag for that again?
So like this link here?
Yeah.
You want it to not look like a link?
Yeah. Well, you know, just
Oh yeah, because by default it would look blue, and if you click on it, it would turn purple.
Yes.
So I think he's asking like how do you make it black?
That's not what I'm asking. Thank you for trying, but it doesn't say like National Geographic there. What's the thing?
Yes. So within our actual tag here, you can define what the text of the link is. So if I want this to say National Geographic to better show what I'm actually clicking on, I can change this text to National Geographic, save the file, and if I refresh it here, you'll see that it says National Geographic. So the text within the tag will define sort of what that linked text is. As for actually making the link not look like a link, you can do that. Easiest way is probably CSS. We'll cover it in week 2. All right, let's do some live coding because I'm feeling risky. So let's copy and paste our club 3. I'm going to make a new file and call it club 4 and paste it in. Now at the very bottom of our site, I'm going to define a list. So these are, I mean, if you just think the Microsoft Word list, that's probably the easiest way to think about them, but we actually use them on the front end or sort of like on our websites in other weird ways to get stuff styled correctly sometimes. I've definitely done that once or twice. But essentially, we can first type UL, and this stands for unordered list. So if we open up that tag and we save our file, if we actually head over to our web browser and if we open it up, we'll see that absolutely nothing has changed. We've defined a list, but we haven't actually put anything inside of the list. So if we head back over to our file, we can then say li, which stands for list item, and then we can actually define a list item. So what do you want the list to say? Someone give me a sentence, a word, something.
Sus.
All right, first one is sus. Well, I've got to. Audience participation, man. So there's our first list item. We'll define another list item using li, and what do you want it to say?
Amogus.
Oh. I'm going to spell it like that just to spite you. Third one more. What?
GNOME.
Oh, okay. Maybe one day. So then if we save our file, we've got these 3 list items here, and if we go back and we refresh, we'll see that we now have a list, and we can see the text that you all wrote there. Naturally, your next thought may be, how do I get my list to be numbers instead of just bullet points? And the way to do that would be to define an ordered list using OL. And so if we open up this tag, we can use the exact same thing that we did in the previous statement, and we can use list items in order to add to it. So if I define a list item here, what do you want it to say?
Lemon.
Oh, all right, lemon. Let's define one more. What would you like it to say?
Orange.
All right, fair enough. So if we save our file, and if we head back over here and refresh the page, we'll see we now have an ordered list, which just means we're using numbers at the start of the list instead of using bullet points. All right, from there, we are going to actually quickly look at a table. And so we're going to open up QWEB5.html, and we're going to check it out here. So here is, here's the list that we defined earlier, just with some different text. We've added some break lines here, which we showed previously. These just add some space on our website. We've also defined another heading here that says rules for safe human watching, and we've defined an ordered list here like we had previously. So at this point, we are at the exact same place that we ended off with the previous file, just with some different text there instead of the lemon and orange that you guys put in. Next, we're going to define a table. And so the best way to think about this would be, like a straight up Microsoft Word table. So if we make one here, you can just put in your headings, and then you can put your items in here. And so that's what we're really making. And so first, we'll start with making a table, and then within that table, we're going to define a table row. So HTML actually defines tables on a row-by-row basis. So in this case, we're defining this row first. Then we're going to define 3th, which stands for table heading. And the difference is a table heading will actually be a little bit bolded, and that's because it's sort of the first item in a table. So here I've got item, stock, and price. And so if I quickly head over to that page and show you, here at the bottom of my site, you can see here's item, stock, and price. And notice how they're bolded and they're centered. They're formatted a little bit differently. That's because we said that they're a table heading. From here, we're going to close out that table row, and we're going to define a new table row. And in this table row, we're going to use the TD tag, and that stands for table data, and that's how we just add a regular item to a table instead. So if I flip back over to my website here, that's how we define each of these rows for shirts, pants, hats, and binoculars. So that's how we've defined this table, and you can, continue adding rows to it if you so choose, but that's essentially how you create a table. So there's all my different rows with the different items. Then we're gonna add some break lines, and we're just gonna add one more paragraph that says check out our blog post below. We don't actually have anything below that. That's just text like we've defined previously. So that's all good. All right, from there, we're actually going to do something that feels a little bit weird, but let's first take this file and let's create a new one. I'm going to call it club6.html. Put it in here. All right, and let's start with where we ended. So you can see here, there's my ending paragraph. I'm starting exactly where I ended last time. From here, we're going to actually create a quick clickable image. So the first thing that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go all the way back up in my page, and I'm going to grab the link that I had before, and I'm going to copy it to the bottom. So there's my link. I'm also going to go back up into my file, and I'm going to grab the image that we defined here, and I'm going to grab it and put it at the bottom of my file. Let me zoom back in, and so you can see here's my link, and here's my image. I'm going to save the file, and I'm going to open it up. And you'll see here that we just have the image as well as the link at the bottom here, right? Nothing too crazy. We've done this before. I'm just putting them beside each other for now. From here, if we want the image to be clickable, we have to somehow say that it is a link. And so I guess my first question would be, how do you think we would do that? Yeah, go ahead.
Put the image inside of the A.
Exactly. So if we put our image inside of the link, we actually will say, hey, this image is a link. And because it's within, if we save our file, and if we head back over here and refresh the page, you'll notice that, hey, this is still a link here. But if I actually hover over the image, my cursor turns into, I guess, for lack of a better word, the hand, which shows that it's a link. And if I click on it, it will open the link. So that's how we can combine two tabs together to sort of get some behavior that maybe you wouldn't have thought of on first sight. And we can put these links pretty much anywhere on our site. We could use them instead of the headings here. These could be defined as links, and pretty much anything on your site can be a link if you really want it to. And that's how they can get some of the interesting and weird sort of website functions where maybe that doesn't look like a normal link, but it still redirects you somewhere else. And of course, custom buttons are probably one of the simplest ways that we can think about that. But suffice to say, you can put a link pretty much anywhere on your website. From here, we are going to go back to some predefined code, open up club7.html, and let me just grab the file here and open it up. So club7.html is essentially what we're going to give you as sort of like a final file for what we did today. It's got our headings, it's got our image, it's got a link here, it's got a list, it's got a ordered list, it has a table as well. It's got a different version, albeit, but still a clickable link, and it redirects you to the expert's guide to people watching. If I head back here, we've got one more thing at the bottom here is we have this sort of thank you visiting. Nice job, me. But we've got this sort of thank you for visiting the website at the bottom here. So if I head back over to my code, we have defined this within a div, and this is sort of a very, very generic entrance into what will happen in week 2, but suffice to say, a div is essentially a way for us to organize stuff on our end. It'll make our lives easier. We can block parts of our code into divs. For example, a good way to do this would probably be to block those ordered lists into its own div, for example. And essentially, we have put a paragraph within this div, and you can see that on our site here. Here's our paragraph, which defines how the text is shown. But essentially, a div is a way to contain your elements within it, and we're actually using this style tag for the first time. Here we've said we want to create a border, and we want it to be 1 pixel, and we want it to be solid. And that probably sounds a bit cryptic at the moment, but suffice to say, that's just going to show us a black border on the website around our div. We'll get into more of this in week 2 with CSS, but that is how we are drawing this border around the div. The last thing that we're going to try to cover here today is sort of this inspect element tool. And if you head over to maybe you were writing a website along with me, if you open up that file, or if you head to really any file, any website, sorry. So I can head over to google.com here, and if I right click on the page and hit inspect, I'll get this inspect element pane to pop up. And probably the most important tool for you right now is going to be this one in the upper left corner with sort of a cursor and a box around it. And if you hit that, it'll become a selector tool. And what it'll do is it'll show you on the website all of the different HTML elements. So if I sort of select this location here, we'll see that, hey, it's a div. And that's just what we showed you previously. And if we actually open it up here, which we can do on the sidebar and hit this opening, we'll see that there's sort of a style tag, which maybe seems a bit cryptic. We're going to ignore that. There's another div here, and all the way down here, we get to the image. And so there is the actual image that is using to create this Google symbol here. And I mean, if you really want to, you can, I mean, copy this and open it up and stuff. But suffice to say, if we go back to our website and we inspect element and we grab this cursor thing, the main thing that we wanted to show you is that if we select our div, it'll show you how much space it takes up. And if we select our paragraph, it will also show you how much space it takes up. And sometimes your elements in HTML don't exactly take up the exact amount of space that you think they would. Maybe you'd think that, hey, our paragraph wouldn't have all of this extra space above and below it, and in week 2, we'll use CSS in order to change that space if you so choose. So this has essentially been a brief little intro to HTML. We've got our heading, we've got some images, we've got some text, we've got a link here, we've got some lists, a table. Probably the most cryptic thing we've done here is made a clickable image, and we've shown you just briefly what we're going to cover in week 2. If anyone has any questions, I'm all for them. I mean, if you want to talk about something a little bit more complicated, you can approach me after as well. I can probably talk to you about that. But I think we're pretty much converting into a social from here on out. Week 2 will be CSS, week 3 will be JavaScript, week 4 will be React. If you are going to not come to anything and then start, I would say come to week 4, come to React. That's when you start doing your dynamic stuff. That's when you start doing the skills that will really help you in the winter term, because that is what a decent portion of the CS web development industry is based off of lately, is these frameworks like React and others that allow you to dynamically make your website. And so what we've shown you today is called a static website because it doesn't change ever. No matter what we do, no matter what we click on, no matter what text we enter, this website doesn't change. But once we get to React, we'll be able to have our website actually change as we do things on it. And that's how the most interactive websites and others are run on the web today. And so I guess that would be my advice to you. If you are the more experienced dev who kind of came here and watched me babble on about HTML for 15 minutes and were like, I don't know if this is really my level, I highly suggest you come to week 4, give us another try then when we're actually starting to do the more complicated stuff. If you're a complete beginner, hopefully what I said helped. I definitely spoke a little too fast. I'm working on it. I've never done this before. I'm nervous as all hell, but hopefully it was a good experience. If you have any feedback, please come to me. I can answer any questions, and yeah, that's it from me. I'm going to stop blabbering on. So thank you for coming. We had a ton of people show up, more than we thought. We had to bring in more chairs and tables. So thank you so much for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks after reading week. It'll be same time, same place. Every Tuesday is our plan.
Probably same place. We might have to figure out the chord situation since it's a bit scuffed.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll let you know. But Josh Kildick.